Welcome to the Women Inspire Aspire podcast. What happens when a successful corporate career no longer feels meaningful and you decide to walk away in search of something that truly matters? In this inspiring episode, we meet Sharada, whose journey from the world of IT to wildlife conservation, handloom, rural livelihood, sustainability, and social justice is a powerful story of purpose and transformation. From volunteering with rescued urban life to working with handloom weavers and artisan communities, Sharda has come to see the deep connections between livelihood, ecology, consumer choices, climate change, and social justice. In this conversation, we explore the hidden world behind the fabric we wear, how India's handloom tradition is far more than just weaving, how handmade production can support both livelihoods and ecological sustainability, why artisans and traditional skills are disappearing and what can be done, how consumers can distinguish authentic handloom from machine-made fabric, why decentralized community-based livelihoods could be the way forward, what wildlife conservation taught Sharda about protecting habitats, not just animals, how to travel more responsibly through slow travel, humility, and respect for nature, and why Gandhian ideas of simple living, sustainability, and rural livelihoods may be more relevant today than ever. This is a conversation about choosing purpose over convenience, people over profit, and sustainability over endless consumption. If you have ever wondered whether the choices you make as a consumer can help create a more equitable and sustainable world, this episode will give you plenty to think about. Listen, reflect, and perhaps look at the clothes you wear, the places you visit, and the life you lead a little differently. Hi Sharada, thank you for accepting my invite to appear in the podcast. How are you doing today?
Hi Venkat, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure. I'm doing great.
It's a pleasure to have you in the podcast. Could you tell us a bit about yourself? What do you do? Where do you live, etc.?
Sure. I have lived all my life in Bangalore. To give a bit of my background, as most Bangaloreans, I studied engineering, went into IT. Even while studying, I used to volunteer with a few organizations. I used to volunteer for animal rights and wildlife. From the beginning, injustice is something that used to bother me. So it could be human, women, animals, anybody who is exploited. I used to find corporate life was very suffocating. I worked with a few organizations trying to tie up CSR activities even during the corporate working with the environment, but soon realized that one is I was not having time left to do anything I like or anything fulfilling. I also was serving corporate interests by engaging my skills and energy to get somebody richer. So one day I just decided to quit. It is only then, after I quit, did I realize a whole alternative world out there which was waiting to be explored. And since then, there is no looking back. Even when I was in corporate, I used to volunteer weekends at Banerghatta Rescue Center, working to rehabilitate urban wildlife displaced from the city. Working with experienced rehabilitator Salim Hamid helped shape my understanding of how the lifestyle in the city was and how it was leading to a lot of displacement and destruction of wildlife in and around. Slowly, my philosophy started shaping around how the wildlife have to be saved and how the tribals who are protecting the forest were getting wiped out. And all these started playing through my mind. One chance encounter with Sri Prasanna, founder of Charka and Desi, on a casual visit to Hegodu was a great influence on the course of what came through the next few years. Through Prasanna, I joined Desi Trust and Charaka and understood the important concept of rural livelihoods. Till now, I was only working with wildlife and my whole perimeter was animals and animal welfare. So I started understanding how lifestyles and ecological sustainability comes into this whole thing and how industrialization has led to ecological degradation. The massive mechanization has led to a lot of loss of livelihoods, and all these started coming into my purview, and I started working with the handloom sector primarily and also the handmade sector related to handlooms. And I also realized how the plight of the handloom workers was also governed by the government policy. Then I met Sri Kumar, a professor who left ISC and is pursuing simple living on a piece of land at a commune called Sangatya near Karkala. And I became part of this commune. And through this, I learned a lot about ecological sustainability, simple lifestyles, connection with justice and equity. So this was another major shift in the way my philosophy was shaping. And I understood how majority people in the country were living simple lives close to land in communities that consumed very less resources, but they were the most affected due to the climate change and the climate catastrophe that was unfolding all around. And I started writing a lot about consumerism, lifestyle choices, writing about urban lifestyle, the effect on ecology, climate change, primarily the injustice that is caused to marginal communities, to tribals, to wildlife. As part of Desi Trust, as managing trustee of the trust and an advisor to Charka Women's Cooperative Society, I try to help the handloom sector, the craftspeople to get a decent, respectable livelihood and to use my skills to get them market access, work with government policies and things like that. An important part of my work is also to engage with public to create conversations, to create awareness about the handmade sector, the lifestyle and the consumption patterns. Through these interactions, I also became a core member of Ragi Kana, a weekly Sante that has transformed the lives of several small farmers and craftspeople by giving them a market for the last 10 years. So all these that I have been involved with after quitting my IT career.
Wow, that's a lot. Let's talk about the handloom sector, which you are very actively involved with. Tell us about handlooms, how the livelihoods are made, and the challenges and struggles involved in it.
As you might know, the handloom sector is one of the oldest, that is, even centuries ago, it has thrived in our country. The handicrafts people and handloom weavers were one of the best paid and well respected people. And after the British colonization, a lot of this changed when the powerloom fabrics came from Manchester and it was forced upon the people of our country. And people did not take very well to it. They still preferred their desi fabrics. But the British imposed a lot of demands on the handloom weavers to stop weaving, to mutilate them in several ways to ensure that they stop their weaving and people buy the machine made fabric. When the cotton growers and the weavers got separated by the machine coming in between them. So if you see the handloom sector, it was very close-knit community. In a village, there were the cotton growers, there were the ginners, there were spinners, there were weavers. Everybody were within the same local economy and ensuring that the money stays within a village or a bunch of villages. And this changed when the whole mechanization of cotton production came, and it also resulted in a lot of problems in the farming sector, which I will not go into detail right now. But we can say that it created a lot of disruption in the handloom sector. When the machine-made fabric came, the handmade sector could not compete with the prices, with the fast production of these machine-made fabrics. This resulted in a lot of loss of livelihood to the weavers and the workers who are working with the handloom weaving process. So when we say handloom weaving, it is not just the weaver who sits on the loom and weaves. It is probably 10 to 12 people who are working in pre-loom activities like ginners, working with spinners, people who do the warping. There's a lot of thing that goes into making a fabric, and all this together got affected. Later on, through a lot of improvements that were brought about through the freedom struggle, when Gandhiji popularized the spinning, popularized khadi, there was a comeback. But subsequent multiple government policies have resulted in slow deterioration of handloom weavers. One of the main challenges that the handloom sector today faces is adulteration of fabric, which means power loom or machine made fabric which is sold as handloom. So it need not be that everything that we buy today as handloom is really authentic handloom. So this question mark about the authenticity is also the reason the artisans are not getting recognized. They're not getting their due. Although some specific weaves like Ikat or Kanjipuram or Banarasi, they do get popular once in a while, but the overall multitude of weavers who do basic fabric, coarse fabric, they were completely neglected. A lot of issues with government policies as well.
So, how do we distinguish handloom and powerloom as a consumer?
One thing is that there are certain types of weaves that we need to understand. For that, it is important to familiarize some of the fabric. So we need to start looking at fabric. Handloom fabric, when I say is woven on a handloom, it need not be a particular fiber. Like for example, it could be silk, cotton, could be wool. There are a lot of natural fibers which are getting woven today by handloom. And the Handloom Reservation Act of 1985 also mandated that a few of the products such as dhotis, towels, saris, any off-loom products, there were 11 products listed, had to be mandatorily woven on handloom. But that is completely violated and this whole act is not implemented in an effective way. But as a consumer, it is not easy to find out whether you're looking at a handloom or powerloom fabric. One is if you look at a lot of fabric, you might looking at the edge of the fabric, what we call selvage. We look at what kind of patterns are possible in handloom, what is not possible in handloom. Or if you look at the back side of the fabric, sometimes when there is a complicated butta that is put or some kind of specific weave that happens in the dobby pattern, we do sometimes make out the difference between powerloom and handloom. But a layman will find it very difficult to distinguish. So the only authentic way is to make sure that people go through trusted sources, which means organizations which are working with handloom to actually know whether the money that they're paying for a premium handloom fabric really goes to the end beneficiary. So this is something we have tried to create awareness by bringing together organizations who are working with these similar causes like Charka and Desi across India and to familiarize and create awareness among the general public. And there are a few technology improvements that are coming up now using sensors which are put right into the loom to kind of make out whether the fabric is authentic handloom or not. The handloom mark is completely diluted. It's really not reliable. That was one mechanism which was introduced, which did not work, unfortunately. Another important way that people can find out is imperfections in the fabric. So if you look at a fabric which is very perfectly woven, very uniform, if you look at an entire sari, handloom or khadi is bound to have some irregularities. You'll find like a thread standing out here and there, a small blob that has got created because the yarn was not even. These add a lot of character to the handmade fabric and one way to find out.
So, there is a whole community involved in the production of handloom. By powerloom, the jobs of supporting people are also affected.
That's true. For example, spinning, which was an activity which employed a large amount of people in villages with a minimum skill with very less emphasis on age limits or anything. This completely was transferred to the machines where all the yarn was completely created by large factories, mills. And there were a lot of pre-loom activities such as starching, warping, and making sure the design happens on the loom and before loom, bobbin winding. So all these became completely mechanized. And even now, today, when we say handloom and powerloom is nothing but a handloom fitted with a motor, which automates it and ensures the speed is high, which means at the same time a handloom sari is woven, maybe 3 or 4 powerloom saris can be woven. One person can monitor 3 different powerlooms at the same time. So that steals a lot of job which otherwise would have gone to a lot of people and got distributed.
Can we look at it as efficiency instead of job loss because they could produce more saris in the same time, right?
That's right. So that is how all automation and all mechanization, the thought comes from efficiency, productivity, and cost effectiveness. So when we look at Western look of concept, the way we keep understanding these, it is more to do with efficiency, which means the machine was introduced to make sure that lots was produced in lesser time, lesser people were required, which means lesser labor issues, lesser productivity costs. So all these were built into, and then somebody was making the profit still. That means whoever owned the machines, they could completely take the profits, which means the means of employment was owned by a few people and a few got richer. Whereas if you look at an Indian model, how this has evolved through the centuries, it meant that a lot of people, this work was distributed. A lot of them could contribute to the economy and could benefit from whatever was getting produced. So instead of power and money getting concentrated in the hands of few people, it was rather distributed. And in a country like India, where a lot of people are struggling to find employment, handloom and handicrafts, which are completely in the unorganized sector today, contribute a large amount of employment opportunities and can provide sustainable means of employment. So when I say sustainable, what it means is ecological sustainability. If you look at machines, they require a lot of resources, a lot of minerals, a lot of fossil fuels to run. And this is not sustainable in the long run. As we are seeing today, this whole industrialization, the climate change, the pollution, the water pollution, the air pollution, everything is result of over mechanization, overuse of machinery and automation. When we look at sustainable means of production like handloom, it is having the potential to ensure that at the same time that we give employment, we ensure that there is ecological sustainability, which means it is closer to the environment, it does not harm the resources, it does not consume electricity, it is labor intensive, and also it preserves a lot of creativity and gives a lot of autonomous control to the weavers, to the artisans, where they're treated as artisans and not just laborers who operate machinery.
Right. Thank you so much for giving the details about the handloom work. What are your plans to work for sustaining handloom?
Desi Trust is an organization which has been existing for the last 30 years, and Charaka is a sister organization. So I work as managing trustee of Desi Trust as well as an advisor to Charaka Women's Cooperative Society. Through these organizations, I'm trying to help the handloom sector gain recognition what it has lost over the years, and to put the focus back on the craftsperson, to help them get a decent, respectable livelihood, to use my skills to get them access to the market, because a market access is a huge issue that lot of artisans are facing today. One is, like I said, the competition from the power looms and machine made fabric is ensuring that they completely are losing their market share, which they deserve, and they are losing their dignity as a result of all these issues. So one important work is bring back the awareness, bring the focus back on the person, the artisan, to recognize their craft, and also at the same time work with government for policy changes. Because end of the day, whatever the benefit or the destruction that is being caused, the policy has a lot of role to play. So we are working with the state government right now for a project called Mahatma Gandhi Vastrodyama, which is primarily a market force initiative that ensures market availability to authentic handmade products within Karnataka. The other large work that Desi Trust does is also to create public awareness about the handmade sector, about lifestyle choices, about why we need to use handlooms and khadi and why not use machine products, and how much should we consume, how our lifestyle choices are related to the destruction, how the ecological sustainability, the livelihoods, to make the public aware of these issues. So I work with a lot of schools and colleges to create sessions. We do a lot of workshops, we do a lot of awareness programs and talks and seminars within Bangalore. And we also try to bring all the sectors working in this sustainability space together, because it cannot work in silo. We cannot make sure only handloom survives, whereas this whole farming is getting spoiled by chemical farming and degradation of soil. So we need to ensure that the farmers, the workers, the handloom weavers, the craftspeople, all the sectors come together and work together. So we do a lot of work working with other organizations in the similar space. And like I said, Ragi Kana is another organization which has worked solely with the goal of ensuring market support for the farmers. Awareness, training, all these are part of what Desi Trust is doing to counter this. It is a sad state of affairs right now because as we are working on all these aspects, the handloom weaver has become an endangered worker because the number of handloom weavers are dropping day to day. First, we need to ensure that whoever is left out, they get work immediately. So that has primarily been the focus of Charaka and Desi Trust. So preserve whatever is existing, then add new people, give training. So all these happening in parallel. From my personal perspective, to bring in some systems. So whatever that I have learned in the corporate, to bring in systems, not just software, to bring specific methodologies to improve this whole life cycle of cloth production and to also give them the exposure that they deserve.
Okay, wonderful. Are there any plans to create awareness amongst the school children because they might be interested in taking this up as their career?
Absolutely. In fact, if you look at some of the alternative schools, they have already introduced spinning the charka, the whole old Gandhian way of spinning yarn, into their curriculum. They are also getting the children exposed to various crafts, handmaking, because it is not just that we need to preserve this craft. Down the line, we have also realized that we have moved away from working with our hands too much into intellectual space, too much into just learning about facts and science and the mathematics and churning numbers. That important connection to nature, working with the soil, working with our hands and creating some crafts, creating hand woven stuff. So a lot of schools are interested in ensuring that this connection comes back. Our work involves working with these schools to introduce this in a small way into the syllabus to make part of their curriculum because the weaving profession was very caste heavy. People were only working with a specific caste could enter this profession, created a lot of stigma around weaving. So a lot of children of weavers today, they don't want to get into weaving. They want to come to the city. They want to take up other jobs. That is something we cannot stop. It is a natural cycle of migration that will happen. But what also is happening interestingly is a lot of children in the cities want to go back to working with their hands. They want to learn weaving. They want to learn spinning and weaving and also take up things like creating their own enterprises, small units where they can give employment to the weavers, and they want to become designers who work with creating some new fabrics, creating some new natural fibers. So a lot of things like this, churning is happening, which is, I feel, very healthy, and we are trying our best to facilitate this happening.
Wonderful. Let's talk about how you're planning to scale your work. India being a huge country with a lot of population, are you planning to train the trainers or work with more organizations? What is your roadmap?
To speak from Charaka perspective, we work with around 1,000 artisans today, and this we have ramped up in over 30 years. So it does take a lot of time and it needs to grow organically. And one organization probably cannot solve this whole problem, which is why, like you rightly said, we need to bring together a lot of such organizations and also inspire a lot of young folks to take up these kind of enterprises, which what we call as green jobs. So we want people who are conscious about environment, who are working in alternative spaces to create more charkas, to create more such units. Every village to have charka so that only a decentralized model is going to work. We might not be able to scale charka to level where we say, okay, from 1,000 people, we are going to employ 10,000. It's not going to happen in that way as I foresee it. The only way is there are multiple people who get inspired by this charka model and they start implementing this in their own villages, going back to their places and getting people to start working with hands. And this can happen as a revolution, which is happening right now. And it's a massive scale because on one hand, the huge demand for handmade fabric, export market for handlooms and handmade, and people want authentic handloom products. So there is a lot of chance to expand, a lot of people to get proper, decent wages and also create eco-friendly modes of production through this.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Let's talk about the animal welfare work that you did. You mentioned about a national park you were involved with. Are you still working on animal welfare area?
Before coming into handlooms, I worked for about 10 years working and volunteering with wildlife rescue and rehabilitation. This was at the Banerghatta Rescue Center. Rehabilitator Salim Hamid, who still does wildlife rehabilitation, but he moved to another organization called ARRC and he's doing excellent work even there. From working directly with wildlife, rescued animals, which are urban wildlife displaced, like snakes, which get displaced from construction sites, squirrels get displaced from the city, kites and various birds. All these that we realize there is so much wildlife around us. My whole understanding expanded over the years. I understood that we cannot save every animal that is injured. We cannot save every animal that is getting displaced. What we have to also do is work in the larger sphere. What is causing this habitat loss? What is causing these forests to disappear? A whole scope expands. So when this happens, I have to work with organizations working with the land. So even now I'm associated with some of the grassroots environmental movements that are happening in the state and also working with them in whatever capacity. For example, I write articles related to environment. I also connect these whole realm of environment, conservation, livelihood, urbanization. All these are definitely part of what I do because in my heart, my whole journey started with wildlife. Anyway, I always keep trying to connect all these together. So yes, I do actively work with environmental movements even now, but not directly handling animals anymore.
There are some folks interested in contributing to animal welfare in Bangalore. Who is the person they need to contact?
So there are many organizations who are working in and around Bangalore. Near Banerghatta itself, there is an organization who are working to protect the larger Banerghatta Biological Park and the National Park, which is much larger area. It's only a matter of just make your first connection with one of these organizations. It could be Banerghatta Rescue Center. It could be anybody who is working with wildlife today. It'll expand. So you start meeting other people. And this is how the connections are being made. Conservation is a huge, huge field that a lot of youngsters are interested today to get into. The best thing would be for children to get in touch with nature. The first thing starts with appreciating nature, the nature around us in day to day. Even within the city, we see a lot of wildlife, lot of trees, lot of butterflies, and to start caring for these animals and these creatures. And slowly we go into conservation and slowly we get into which are the endangered species. So many such organizations are working today in this.
Okay, thank you for sharing those details. We talked a lot about your work. Let's talk about your hobbies and interests. What do you do in your free time?
I love traveling. So I spend a lot of time traveling. Mostly all my travels somehow are linked to nature or craft. So I do make sure that I go through a lot of new experiences. I do trekking, bird watching in the mountains, Western Ghats. These are some of the favorite places that I go to. Frog watching is a newfound interest that I picked up. So I'm now interested to learn about this. So it's like a constant process of learning. So I read a lot, fiction, non-fiction. And I also love documenting communities. So I do take small footages, write a lot about all these experiences, little bit listening to music. I love sketching and cartooning as well. So yeah, quite a few of these.
Great. So, can you give us some tips about eco-friendly travel and how to get involved in bird watching, trekking, etc.?
I can explain like how I went about it. First thing that I realized is that travel itself is somewhat counterintuitive to what we are trying to see. I'm trying to consciously use the word travel and not tourism because tourism is a big thing that happens today where most of the places are getting completely exploited and degraded by a lot of people ending up in the same place. So my understanding slowly transferred from the way I travel. I mostly adopt slow travel. I don't use flight as much as possible when there is no other choice, like you have to go out of the country or something. So I try to make sure that all my travels are slow. I keep enough time for travel. I use trains or buses and local transport every time that I travel to ensure that wherever I go, I don't disturb the place. So I don't try to create a world there of my own. So I don't try to create my home over there. Instead, I try to blend with whatever is happening there, try to absorb the culture that might be local customs. It could be very delicate ecosystem for a particular habitat of endangered species. So I try to keep my footprint as low as possible by not interfering. So when I go to a place which has wildlife, it should not be like first thing I do is I go and want to find the animal, go behind it, harass it. It should be to just enjoy it from far away and try to not disturb its regular habitat, its regular behavior. With a lot of people getting into wildlife photography, it's become a big thing now with the drones and all that. And I see how the wildlife are feeling the stress of this. So we need to completely stay away from it. And instead of just taking pictures, nature journaling, just sit in a place, observe it for 2-3 hours and try to sketch something. Just observe the behavior, and that is so much that we need to learn from nature. And one of the most important thing that a traveler needs to have is humility. We don't know enough and we need to learn from whichever place that we are going. So we should never go to a place with I know everything and I'm going to lecture somebody about it, or I need to judge somebody the way they behave or something that they do. It is their tradition, their custom. We just need to be respectful of the locals. We need to ensure that we don't go with that air and we go with the feeling of humility and learning. And this can be fruitful and it can be very fulfilling to travel this way.
Thank you so much for those tips. It will be very useful for the listeners. We are coming towards the end of the podcast. Do you want to add anything before we conclude?
Just a small detail which, I just wanted to add it in the beginning, so I thought I'll add it now. I come from a family of Gandhians. And during my childhood, there was a lot of Gandhian ideals, all this khadi wearing. Somehow I was not taken to it right at the beginning. But now I feel through this work, through the connections that I've made, it has somehow come full cycle. So whatever I can in now hindsight look at how my family would follow a simple lifestyle, wear khadi all the time and dedicate their lives to working with the communities. So now I'm able to appreciate as I read more of Gandhism. And also I feel the Gandhian thought has a way of getting shelved into like a very old thing, something that old people do and it's not for youngsters. But I feel that with climate change, with this climate catastrophe, with rapid industrialization, the pollution, I feel there is nothing more relevant now than Gandhian thoughts and bringing back what this whole rural livelihoods, the sustainability angle into all our actions and our thoughts. So just wanted to add that realization came slowly and it wasn't forced. So it came like a full cycle.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so much for making time and appearing in the podcast and sharing your expertise and views. I wish you all the best in your life and whatever you aspire to do. Please take care and bye for now.
Thank you so much, Venkat. This was very engaging and I'm very happy that you initiated this. Thank you so much. Take care.
That was a great podcast with Sharada Ganesh. Please subscribe to this channel and follow it for more awesome podcasts. Opinions expressed by the guests in this podcast are their own. The host or the sponsors of the podcast do not condone the opinions expressed by the guests or the actions arising out of those opinions. Any decisions or actions that the listeners might take as a result of listening to this podcast must be based on their own judgment and will be at their own risk. The podcast host or their sponsors will not be held responsible for the consequences of any actions and or decisions taken as a result of any content in this podcast.